Next week at least, I'm going to be doing the Earl Farrell Show from 3 to 6 if you want to hear some good talk. One of my guests this afternoon is going to be John Ganazzo. J.J. Ganazzo, who's been doing scorekeeping for since 1971 for the Memphis Redbirds. Chicks, Blues, Chicks, Redbirds. Nation of Jake in March. I'm going to fill in for Jake 2 hours. Earl had bypass surgery. He's doing okay. He might be out for a couple of weeks, so I'll be filling in there from 3 to 6 the next couple of weeks, maybe. We'll see. Memphis Heritage. I was with June West on Friday. Their preservation series is on Monday nights in March every year. This time it's going to be with John Griffin and myself talking about architecture. And June is real good about her math. It's 4 different 50-year sections for our bicentennial. Very good. So the first one's about the 1800s, 1850s. You don't buy individual sections. Just a $50 ticket if you're a member, $75 if you're not. But if you buy a membership, you get the $50 price. That's all on this slide right here. Easiest number in Memphis to remember besides Graceland is 272-2727. And then Miss McCarter, wave her hand. Lunch. Miss McCarter, you got lunch coming to you. From Metro Eats downstairs. They got a really good ham sandwich down there, almost as good as Shelby Forest General Store. But here's all the ways to get that information there. But 4 different series on Monday nights. Willie, you've done this before, hadn't you, with them on Monday nights? And you talk on the preservation series they do every year at Howard Hall. That's not Howard Hall. That's the Napoleon Hill's house. That's a Newman photograph. Let's see. Mount Zion Memorial Front. Where's Bill? Bill, I put your email address up here. Where'd you go? Wave your hand. That's fine. That's fine. There he is right there. Stand. Look at Bill right there. Folks, I'm going to point. I put the pointer on him. Boom. Now, he's the one that stood up at the music show last time and talked about Mount Zion Memorial Fund. Now, this is not Mount Zion Cemetery on South Parkway that everybody knows about, right there in the curve at South Parkway. They had built South Parkway around it, right by the Chew C. Sawyer marker. But this Saturday, March 9th, the Rose Hill Cemetery, which is down, let's see, I don't have it, which is down Elvis Presley Boulevard, past Forest Hill and all that in Hamilton, the Post Center. Right when you go to that train track, it's right there on your left on the east side of the street. That's Rose Hill, a distressed cemetery. Mount Carmel's across the street. Who's buried in Mount Carmel Cemetery? Tom Lee. Somebody knew that answer. Lucy Campbell. Since we're mentioning Tom Lee right now, Charmille, do you mind standing up and turning around and say, wave to Charmille Neely. She's bringing free barbecue in here to everybody today from Neely's Barbecue. No, she's not related to Neely's Barbecue, but she's. We're going to do a historical marker with her. We hope if Jim Cole lets us do it, for Tom Lee's house. She is the great niece of Tom Lee. And her daughter is here with her driver's license, 4-year-old. She brings that median age down real big here for this tour. And Bob, you're 104? 124? That's your IQ, right? 90. All right, 90 and 4 right here. But they're here to visit today and see a part of this show. All right, so I had to sign a book yesterday at the Peabody Hotel. Got to get your autograph. This lady was so excited about it. And there I did, and we had a picture made. It was Miss Stazinski's. How do you spell that? I had to write it down on a BevNap. From Salt Creek Elementary School in Alton, Illinois. Had to get a John Philip Duck book. And we did our picture. That's one of the joys of being the Duck Master. Walking in Memphis, 10 feet off of Beale. Y'all seen this, haven't you, on Beale Street? You've heard that song by Mark Cohen, Walking in Memphis. Here's 2 other versions of Walking in Memphis. On the right here, this person yesterday bought me this. People have these things. They go around the country. Everywhere they go, they take pictures, don't they? And have dolls like this or some little, remember those 901 rocks or whatever, and people put, how about this one? Christopher Walking in Memphis. Isn't that a great t-shirt? Looks kind of like Willie, doesn't it? Walking in Memphis. Wouldn't you like Christopher Walken to sing Walking in Memphis to you? That's Mitch Harrison, by the way, if Johnny Stewart's here. There's Jimmy Wright. We had him on the KWAM last Friday. I probably got in trouble for some of the things we said, but he's our new Shelby County historian. That's what he looks like. 2 Jimmys in the same room at one time. There was no air in that room at all. It was all gone. We had a good time talking. Jimmy Wright III, and he'll do a fabulous job. Living Legends is this Sunday. If you want to see a cultural explosion, come to Living Legends at 10 o'clock on this Sunday at Reverend Lucinda Gray's church. For 17 years, they've been honoring people in the African-American community for their achievements while they're still alive, you know. And that's kind of neat. And then Women of Achievement, March 24th, at the University of Memphis, Holiday Inn, 3700 Central, 2 o'clock. 35th year of Women of Achievement. And our March 11th program is specifically designed on Women of Achievement in our community. The Mallory Neely series is this Sunday as well, 4 o'clock, 35 spaces available. Maybe some are left now. Hopefully we'll sell that one out and add another show at 4 o'clock. This is at 4 o'clock, but it's $10, which gets you admission to Mallory Neely that day, and a map exhibit they got of some very exquisite maps, old maps. It'd be a really cool day to come down and hear a lecture from me and see Mallory Neely on a Sunday afternoon. That's after the time changes. Time changes 2 weeks before that, so it's going to be a little bit lighter later on. Of course, March 2nd, we have the bicentennial exhibit here for Pink Palace coming up. Oh, we got to go quick here. There's our sponsors. I'll come back to that. Elmwood, April 6th. The first 2 tours are sold out. The 3rd tour is sold out. We're adding the 4th tour if you want to get to it. Same day, 3:30. Shelby County History Festival, April 7th. I'll be back at the Peabody March 9th and March 30th. Now, everybody's got to take a pledge with me today. Y'all ready to take the pledge? It's your bicentennial. Raise your right hand, not your left hand. Right hand. You ready now? Everybody's got to go visit a Memphis attraction you have not visited yet, okay? This is a promise. If you don't do it, don't raise your hand. Are you ready? I state your name. And we'll try it again. Do solemnly pledge to make at least one staycation in Memphis during the summer of 2019 to an attraction that I have never visited. After doing such, I will tell a friend of my wonderful discovery and strongly encourage him and her to do the same. I think everybody did that. We're unanimous. Do it. I guarantee you, you'll want to go to another one and another one and another one. If you haven't been to Graceland, if you haven't been to the Slave Haven under the Burkle Estate up there in North Memphis. 1 minute. I got the 1 minute finger there, it looked like. That's your pledge, folks. The index finger. Y'all all pledged. Where have you not been, Jordan?
I'm not sure.
He's my expert on Hotel Claridge, by the way. Right there. He knows it. Hotel King Cotton, that's right. Never mind. But he lives in the Lincoln American Tower. He lets me get into that rooftop sometimes, you know, on the top. Or his grandmother does. Yeah. Della Adams, if you know Della. What else, folks? Oh, this is the one I did the very first. This is my total disclaimer today. We have 5 hours of information, okay? We got 45 minutes. So don't tell me I didn't talk about John B. Edgar Point. Okay, we're ready to start right here, Luke. Come on, we're gonna do it real fast.
All right, hello everyone and welcome. My name is Luke Ramsey and I work in the Education Department here at the Pink Palace Museum. We are so glad that you could join us today, and if you wish to revisit this talk later or share it with a friend, the entire series will also be available online through the Pink Palace website and through the University of Memphis Library. Our speaker today is a lifelong Memphian and a graduate of both Memphis University School and the Memphis State University. In his extensive experience, he has managed some of this community's greatest assets, including museums, the Park Commission, and that band of us in the Peabody Hotel. Will you please help give a warm welcome to our Shelby County historian, or former Shelby County historian, Mr. Jimmy Ogle.
Thank you. So read the minutes. Luke is the most important person here, besides Jess. You know why? How did you get here? You see my name 9 times on pink signs getting around over here? Every day he sets them out. He picks them up. And he gets them in the exact same order every spot, too. He's really good about directing you around. So thank you for all your tech support here. And I'm still the Shelby County historian until they read the minutes at the next meeting. Now, our program today is Historic Memphis Riverfront, and why not show a picture of the Mary Elizabeth boat right here? The Proud Mary, you know, is a harbor towboat in Memphis. We'll get to that in a minute. And of course, on my manhole covers downtown, we have a steamboat. That's one of our great manhole covers. But again, thanks to our sponsors, Vincent Astor, Phyllis Peterson, Erickson Group, University of Memphis Libraries, and Communities and Conversation Series at Rhodes College. Our artifact of the day is from Captain Charles Church. It's a silver service set. Say that fast, right? Right here, it's on display here at the Pink Palace Museum. Oh, will be on display, right, in the Bicentennial Series. You got to come back March 2nd. Sunday, March 3rd is Community Day, 12 to 5. Free day in here. Come back. Music, all this other stuff going on. But it's on loan from the Mississippi River Museum at Mud Island River Park. It will be featured in the Bicentennial exhibit through October 20th. It was presented to Captain Charles Church around 1855. The Bulletin No. 2 was the steamboat owned by Captain Church that left Memphis on March 22nd, 1855 with a load of cotton and a crew of 60 men, including his son, born to an enslaved woman, Robert R. Church. 2 days out of Memphis, a fire started. Captain Church helped his men escape to safety and was the last to leave the ship. The grateful citizens of Memphis presented a silver pitcher and set of goblets to the captain. That's an old piece of silver there, isn't it? Captain Church. And y'all know that Church family name, I think, in Memphis, Tennessee. There you go, them all together. That's pretty, isn't it? It's just like what I got in my dining room at home, you know. Welcome to Memphis. This is right. There's your welcoming when they opened up the Memphis and Arkansas Bridge in 1949. You've seen this before. America's cleanest city. It's just a great welcome sign there. I like it. Memphis is number 6 on the National Register of Historic Places for listings in the country, behind Washington, Philadelphia, Boston, Baltimore, and New Orleans. We're an old area. And the Mississippi River drains 41% of continental North America. That's 31 states and 2 provinces of Canada. Basically everything between the Rocky Mountains and the Smoky Mountains comes flowing down through here. The Missouri River, it starts up at the Missouri River real quick right up here and comes all the way down to St. Louis, up there in Alberta and Saskatchewan. The upper Mississippi at Lake Itasca, you can basically walk across there. And then you come over to New York, Pennsylvania, West Virginia, the Ohio River to Pittsburgh there, the 3 rivers, down to the tip of Illinois. And all this comes by Memphis about an average of 330,000 gallons a minute at about 8 miles an hour. And every gallon of water has a teaspoon of mud, you see. About 300 years after Memphis was discovered here, the headwaters were discovered up there in North Minnesota by a Chippewa Indian guide named Henry Rose Schoolcraft. And to get the name, he had to go to get a Latin word and a Greek word for a Chippewa guy to make the name of Lake Itasca true head, or truth in head. That's what Lake Itasca comes from. There's the confluence right there. There's head of passes down below New Orleans. Kind of fans out, all that siltation runs out into the Gulf of Mexico, keeps on expanding the river. Here's a cartography map from 1934 to show you, before we had levees and river control, how the river swang wildly. Look at Horseshoe Lake and stuff like that. A lot of oxbow lakes were formed and cut off as the river made its way all around the delta. When they did the levees in the 1930s, they cut off 170 miles of river. It was going like this. And they didn't want to cut off too much because it'd go too fast. The odd Mississippi River, the oddest, most meandering large river in the world, used to be sometimes up to 60 miles wide, maybe 4 feet deep, but 60 miles wide, you know, that flat delta. My most interesting stat to me is levees and astronauts, that when the astronauts are descending on Earth, the first man-made structure they recognize on Earth is the Great Wall of China. Right? Right, Bob? Yeah, right. The second, and not the Superdome or the St. Louis Arch, and the second most visible structure when you're descending on Earth from outer space is the earthen levee system of the Mississippi River. 300 feet wide, about 40 feet tall, several hundred miles long. It's huge, but you cannot control the Mississippi River, but only accommodate her. And we found that out on many occasions. This project is still ongoing. A raindrop drops in Lake Itasca. It takes 90 days to get to the Gulf of Mexico, naturally flowing down. Every gallon of water, like I said, has a teaspoon of mud. They say that's too thick to drink, too thin to plow. It's one of those great quotes. Some of the names for the Mississippi River: the Mighty Mississippi, the Muddy Mississippi, Old Man River. Mark Twain called it the Great Sewer because he could. But you drop your cigarette butt down in Wrigley Field, it'll eventually make its way past Memphis and the storm drain systems. You know, it's a lot of stuff coming down the river other than just trees and golf carts and everything like that. I've also said that it's the first transgender river in our community too, or in our country. Old Man River, she just keeps rolling along. But, come on, get on your toes here. It's the 21st century. Bet you didn't know that. Here's some other quotes. We all live downstream from someone, and what happens in a watershed does not just stay in that watershed. Think about that. That's a good quote, just kind of like Las Vegas. Here's Leonardo da Vinci. You didn't think, Linda, I'd say Leonardo da Vinci today, did you? That went on your radar, was it? When you put your hand in a flowing stream, you touch the last that has gone before and the first of what is still to come. Isn't that nice? That's the odd meandering river. You see how they cut through it like that? Do unto those downstream as you would have those upstream do unto you. And like I say, too thin to drink, too thick to plow. Here, 8 times we've ever been over 40 feet in Memphis. 2011, 8 years ago. Y'all saw that. We'll show some pictures of that in Memphis. That's a pretty spectacular thing to see when you see it up that high. Find proof the flood is over. Barbecue ribs. Memphis is safe. That's a good cartoon. They didn't go to Neely's, did they? All-time low, minus 10.7. I remember that in 1988. You could basically walk across the Mississippi River. If Henry Turley or Ward Archer Jr. say they swam across the Mississippi River, you know it happened in 1988. Because it wasn't a mile wide. It was about 800 feet wide then. So they they swam across the river, but it was really narrow at the time. It was closed for 3 months to shipping. In fact, after we had our 2011 high, second all-time high at 48 feet, we come back 16 months later in August of 2012 and get our second all-time low. That's a 58-foot swing of depth there in just 16 minutes. That's how uncontrollable or unpredictable the river is. You've seen me on the river. That was when it was 18R. Obviously, I'm talking to somebody. But here's the various stages. I mean, flood stages at 34, that kind of gets you into the 100-year floodplain. That's by design. Don't go live in the 100-year floodplain. You're going to get flooded. Get up above that. In 1872, that's off the screen right there, but 1872, here's how we kind of try to know from city to city how river conditions were, because nobody really knew about the river. It was swaying back and forth, and we're starting to have steamboats. So what they did in 1872, they told every city to take the low water mark of that year and make that 0 on your local gauge. And that's relation to sea level. So in Memphis that year is 183.9 feet, or 184 feet. I don't know how they got to 183.9 in 1872. And that's where 0 is here. So this is 18 feet above 0. Right now we're 32 feet above that. So we're at 216 feet sea level. Right there in front of the law school, that's 272 feet. It says so on that little marker right there in front of it. Here's the old river gauge right here that's still down there. It's a 6-to-1 slope. That's right out in front of AutoZone on the other side of Riverside Drive. If you come down and look at it, they got these numbers on it, so it's a 6-to-1 slope, and the water would come up. They go down and look at it. Okay, it's 26 on the river gauge today. Here is what I mean about every gallon of water has a teaspoon of mud. For 2 weeks in 2011, this is President's Island right here. Here's the river coming around that big bend. Up here's something called the National Ornamental Metal Museum. And coming right to the west like this and start breaking this levee. It was coming down at 900,000 gallons a minute at 15 miles an hour out of the bank, just ruling over the levee right there and cut through. And this is about, and then it finally dropped back down and got inside the channel and went back on around. But it was totally out of control. And look at all the siltation that got left. If that doesn't show you what you mean about every gallon of water has a teaspoon of mud, and for centuries that's been laying out, that's a very modern day dramatic slide of what the river can do to an area that's not protected. Again, we're an early point of discovery, one of the 3 earliest in the United States, site of the first river engagement between Europeans, which was DeSoto in 1541, and Native Americans. He wandered all through here. That's 79 years before the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, some of our early explorers. After that, it was more than 100 years later before Marquette and Joliet, the Frenchmen, came down. They were the first white men to map the river. 1682, Robert de La Salle from France was the first European to go all the way down to the Gulf of Mexico. Then in 1739, Bienville came up from New Orleans and formed Fort Assumption here in the French Fort area, down by the Metal Museum, let's say. And then 1795, our Spanish fort, Fort San Fernando, is down there by the pyramid. Early river craft, canoes and rafts and flatboats. Some of these folks who come up in the flatboat to Memphis, hey, I like it in Memphis. They pulled a flatboat up and they built a cabin out of it. Native Americans, I'm going to catch somebody here. If you have this in your pocket, I'll match it, okay? Here's an early portrait, but there's this painting, The Discovery of the Mississippi River by William Henry Powell, U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C. This shows at the U.S. Capitol in Washington, D.C., probably done here in Memphis. But guess what? It's on the back of a $500 bill. Anybody got a $500 bill? I told you I'd match it. You don't? I didn't know that was on the back of a $500 bill. I've never seen one. Early map here in the 1750s, a French map. You kind of see all the little rivers coming down to the Gulf. 1754, the early claims of the whole area here. New France up here, New Spain down here, Louisiana in here. This kind of goes into the colonies for us right here along the coastline. And it took several years to get all these other folks out of here from Europe. All roads lead to Memphis. So Memphis is on the highest piece of ground on the Mississippi River between Cairo and Natchez. When DeSoto got here, it was the spring of the year. It was flooding. It used to flood 35 miles in that direction. He thought he discovered the Pacific Ocean because all he could see was water. He thought the Ohio River flowed into the Gulf of California, not the Gulf of Mexico. And the earth was flat at the time. By map, no maps and anything. But these are the old high ridges here that became our streets. This is Poplar. This is Lamar. But it all led to this one high spot they came across right there. We're the fourth Chickasaw Bluff in West Tennessee on the eastern bank. 60 miles north is Fulton or Fort Pillow. 40 miles north is Randolph. 20 miles north, Meeman-Shelby Forest State Park. And then Memphis, the fourth bluff. This is actually an actual new picture or current picture of Randolph. That's what Memphis would look like if Memphis wasn't here, with all the buildings and everything. The 7 flags that used to fly down there on Mud Island, maybe we'll get them back this year. The 7 flags of jurisdiction over the last 468 years, beginning with Spain, then France, Great Britain, United States. North Carolina came all the way across. We're the first territory to become a state in 1782, and then we became a state in 1796, and then the Confederate States in 1 year there. Here's another old map. There's the Chickasaw Bluffs. There's the Gayoso cutout. Old map there, another old map of our county. See how important the rivers are, the Hatchie, the Loosahatchee, the Wolf, Nankana. Early forts, Fort Assumption, it lasted about 3 months. The French didn't like the mosquitoes or the humidity here, I don't think. Fort San Fernando came up, 1795. That became Fort Esperanza over in Hopefield, Arkansas, Fort of Hope, let's say. We changed our name to Fort Adams. First U.S. flag flew in 1797. The name Adams got taken down to Natchez, and so we became Fort Pike, then Fort Pickering, and moved on down to the south end of the bluff near the Metal Museum because it was higher ground. We were actually, the Spanish put the fort in the floodplain. That didn't make much sense at that time, so why would we repeat that? Here's an old historical marker for Fort Assumption down on that end of town, south end of town. Fort San Fernando, that's about where the pyramid is nowadays. It's where Auction Park is now, right across from the pyramid. Way down here, that's where the Gayoso Bayou and the Wolf River all came in together right there and came to the Mississippi. There's a big eddy right here that they could come on, the boats could come on in. As we drained our city, there's a historical marker. There it is again. Again, another picture, Gayoso Bayou going on out. It goes all the way down to past the Central train station as we drain our city. Louisiana Purchase, 1803. That's when we get rid of the French. So in 1795, we signed the Treaty of the Spanish out of here east of the Mississippi. Now we double the size of our country almost over here. We get rid of the French with the Louisiana Purchase in 1803. 1811, 1812, there's a big earthquake, a series of earthquakes over several months. Church bells rang as far away as Charleston, South Carolina. They said the river flowed backwards, which means land depressed and the river went north. Reelfoot Lake was formed during that time. Memphis area was formed in 400 AD, they said, in an earthquake during that time. We call this the sunken land over there in Arkansas, and it's flat. Here's some banks of the Mississippi caving in during the earthquake of 1811 and 1812. I think Nicholas Roosevelt drove that boat down to Washington, I think it was, and scouted the river, and when he came back, all his milestones and landmarks were taken from caving in while he was coming down to go all the way to New Orleans for the first time in a steamboat. War of 1812, one of my favorite wars, because it's the one that was the most important for Memphis before there was Memphis. We had to get these lands cleared out, so it's our second war of independence from Great Britain in 3 theaters, Lake Erie, Chesapeake Bay, and New Orleans. A very benign war. We got our Star-Spangled Banner from it. A lot of stories about the War of 1812. We'll cover that in our wars segment later on. 1818, actually Andrew Jackson went down in 1815 and won the Battle of New Orleans 3 weeks after the treaty had been signed, but he came to military fame for that. So the first 22 years we're a state from 1796 to 1818. All of West Tennessee is owned by the Chickasaw Nation. East Tennessee, West Tennessee, Chickasaw. Now it's East Tennessee, Middle Tennessee, Chickasaw. 6.8 million acres of land that Andrew Jackson and Isaac Shelby negotiated for $330,000 or 4.5 cents an acre on 20 annual payments of $15,000 each. That's now 21 counties. Memphis was laid out in 1819, right after that. Basically the pyramid here, St. Jude, Danny Thomas, Union. This was the 1,309 acres, 362 lots laid out in 1819 to start Memphis. Our co-founders were James Winchester, Andrew Jackson, and John Overton, and Memphis was named for the similarity to the Memphis, Memphis on the Nile River in Egypt, and that was named by James Winchester. Marcus Winchester was a son of James Winchester, our first mayor. Some of the early explorers, Davy Crockett, Andrew Jackson, Zachary Taylor, John James Audubon, Meriwether Lewis. All these folks were coming through here before they became presidents or explorers or famous people. Davy Crockett won House of Representatives twice, lost twice, and upon the second time he was frustrated and he left town. But John James Audubon, came. He was here for one day, but he got a historical marker for being here for one day. But this is a Mississippi flyway. There's over 300 species of migratory waterfowl. That's 70% of the migratory waterfowl in America come down the Mississippi flyway. You got Stuttgart over here, Grand Junction over here, Ducks Unlimited headquarters here. There are 90 species of fish in this river. Now back to Davy Crockett. He said, to hell with Tennessee, I'm going to Texas. And he didn't do too good in Texas because he got killed at the Alamo a year later, right? This is an old picture right here. You see a lot about Memphis on the bluff and how we're on the high bluff, no Timely Park or Riverside Drive. And I was at Mortimer's restaurant not too long ago, and a man came up. Somebody said, that's the Shelby County historian. So he wanted to draw paintings. And he took that picture and made this out of it. His name is Robert McCabe. And he showed me this. And I said, well, you want to draw some pictures, some more buildings in Memphis? So I put him on to Dig Memphis. I got him 10,000 more to draw right now. Isn't that good? That was done just in January here. That's pretty good, I think. Memphis in 1828, here's a drawing. You're looking north now. Back in here is about where the convention center would be. This is probably where Union Avenue and all that high bluff there above Timely Park is now. There's some flatboats coming in. You kind of see how before we had levees and everything, that parallel river would come down here and, of course, become St. Francis, but it was kind of wild all through in here. A lot of streams and rivers. The military road to Arkansas in the 1830s. Once you ferried across the river here, you went up to Marion, came across all the way to Little Rock. You had the overland stage at that time that would go to Fort Smith and then connect to the west coast. You can see how it kind of came through all the way around to the west coast. It was very important before we had the train routes going through there. In 1832, the water route of the Trail of Tears passed through here. You've heard the land route that went down Highway 64 or Stage Road. But there was about 3,000 Native Americans moved in the 1830s. This marker is down at Bill Street Landing. We did this about 5 years ago with the National Park Service, and Graydon Swisher of our Historical Commission was very instrumental in this. But about 3,000 came from Chattanooga, went up to Paducah by barge, came on down by Memphis, over to Helena, up the Arkansas River to Fort Coffee. Moved at that time by the water route of the Trail of Tears. Early picture of our Navy Yard area. This is about where the Convention Center and Pyramid area is, right in that area there. Front Street was literally the front street to the river. There was no Timely Park or Riverside Drive or railroads at the time. That's why they called it Front Street. The little happy old wharf boatmen coming in, hanging out, flatboatmen. They started taking over. There was really no law as out-of-towners treated locals poorly. They refused to pay wharfage fees. So Mayor William Spickernagel, what a great name for a mayor, Spickernagel, came down. And he got chased back up the bluff. He tried to collect some fees, and they chased him back up the bluff. He returned with the constable and a warrant, and they chased him back up the bluff again. So he returned with the militia and killed the leader named Tester. And then our riverfront became safer. So that's how Riverfront started in the 1840s. Old Mayor Spickernagel got it under control. He was probably brilliant at the basics, wasn't he? Look at those cobblestones wharf. Before we had these cobblestones, you'd get off a boat, and you go into that mud, and you go about knee deep, you pull your leg out, it'd suck your shoe or boot off. It wasn't a friendly way to come to Memphis or an easy way, and you had carts down there and cotton and all this stuff, all this muddy things down there, let's say. And so we started laying cobblestones in the 1850s, 19 different work sessions over a 40-year period of time, over 1 million cobblestone laid. That made us a good, hard steamboat wharf. There's some of the dead man rings. Again, there's a picture of Memphis, 1854, the Navy Yard. So we started building that, becoming a big steamboat center. There's the high bluffs, no Riverside Drive, no Mud Island yet. A few other old renderings here. I like these old renderings. And then in 1857, the railroad train y'all love came in from Charleston, the first railroad to connect the Atlantic Ocean with the Mississippi River in the history of our country at a time when most people are riding a horse and buggy across the country at about 10 miles an hour. Now you're riding a train about 50 miles an hour. That was a big game changer right there. Put Memphis on the map. That's what saved us from the Civil War, really being a transportation center. And it was such a big deal because most railroads were about 100 miles long at the time. that we had a celebration called Wedding of the Waters, the greatest demonstration of popular joy ever witnessed in the Mississippi River Valley. We poured water into the river from Atlantic Ocean. Took water from the Mississippi River and poured it into the Atlantic Ocean too. There's a historical marker we're trying to find right now. A little construction going on. So you see the river kind of came in from the northwest until we built the I-40 bridge. This kind of came in a big loop like this and went around. And this is the Wolf River coming down. The Loosahachie now cuts out at Fraser, but it used to come down into here too. And so this is where the river channel goes now. I'll show you that comparison in a few minutes. Here's an old map from, I think, the 1880s of Memphis coming in. You can see the Loosahachie and Wolf coming in all the way down. We're growing down to Fort Pickering here, the high part of the bluff. By that time, we're annexing with the transportation, with the river. In 1899 is when we turn our back on the river because we get automobiles and go out to Overland Park. In the 19th century, we had 400 sawmills here. We're the hardwood capital of the world from lumber and cobblestones. Look at how you imagine with the water rising up and down like that, having to move that lumber with water. Sooner or later, it'd move itself because it'd float away. But we're the cotton capital of the world. Between 1880 and 1920, 70% of the cotton crop was within 200 miles of Memphis. And between 1803 and 1937, cotton was the #1 export out of the United States. That's how important we were here. Trading mules before we had tractors, and right now 45% of the rice in America grows between Memphis and Little Rock. 45% of the rice. High bluffs and cotton, which you could say, because we're protected up here. All that would flood for 35 miles, and like you're seeing right now over there. Now you can see why these boats sank, can't you? I mean, 9,000, how do you like to load that by hand? That's not too easy. And of course, it might catch fire, hit a snag, it'd sink, all that tonnage. The Naval Battle of Memphis, real quickly, we can come back and talk several hours about this, but the Union strategy was get control of the western rivers, Memphis being a big supply town and troop movement town. So the Union fleet came down, about 18 guns and 80 gunboats. The Confederate fleet came up, about 8 gunboats and 18 guns. It was a great mismatch. On June 6, 1862, and about 5,000 citizens sat on the banks of the Mississippi River and watched it like it was an NFL football game or fireworks show. They weren't shooting they were shooting each other in the river. They weren't shooting on the land here. And it only lasted 90 minutes because there was such a mismatch, but it ended up being the largest inland naval battle in the history of the world, right here on June 6, 1862. Memphis is quickly a northern occupied town. Here's some of the battle scenes right here, the ram boats, the ironclad boats the Union had. It was just a real big mismatch. Here's General Sherman's match. There's my fabulous railroad track right there. Everybody loved it. See, having that railroad track here, having that steamboat landing, you're controlling all the transportation in the western part of the country. Union occupation for 3 years saved our city. How ironic it was that Northerners were selling guns and butter to Southerners who killed Northerners, and Southerners were shipping food and cotton to Northerners who killed Southerners. It's like spy versus spy versus spy in the old Mad magazine, you know. We housed over 7,000 wounded soldiers during this time. Business was so good that First Tennessee Bank actually opened during the middle of the Civil War. It's the 14th oldest bank charter in America. It opened as First National Bank. They got my checking account. Here's Fort Pickering that stretched about 2 miles long from, say, right here where the Metal Museum is right now, almost all the way down to Vance Street on that high bluff right there. After the war, Memphis is trying to recover through Reconstruction. The Sultana, the quickest way to get Union soldiers back up the river was by steamboat, not by rail. The Union soldiers mustering out from the prison camps. Boats were certificated, and the captains were incentivized, $5 for every enlisted man and $10 for every officer. The certificates were relaxed, so this boat went down to New Orleans, Natchez, Vicksburg, a little something snafu happened there in Vicksburg, and Jerry Potter could tell you every villain about that. It goes all the way to Lincoln, to tell you the truth. And they had over 2,300 passengers on the boat, certificated for 376 by the time they got to Memphis. That's 6 times the legal limit, 100 horses, and 1 stove for a 7-day journey. How would you like to get 500 people in here, about 10 horses, no Metro Eats, you know? Horrible conditions. They leave Memphis at 11:30 on April 26th. They go upriver. The boilers explode about 7 miles upriver. Bodies flow by Memphis for days. Over 1,700 people lost their life. That's 200 more than the Titanic. So it's the largest maritime disaster in the history of our country. So from 1857, the first railroad to get here, largest inland naval battle, largest maritime disaster. Within 8 years, 3 big #1s right there for our community. There it is up in a soybean field up there now. What's left of it is mostly a wooden boat. You know, most of the life expectancy of a steamboat was about 3 years because they were wooden. They would burn down a lot, you know. Here's Memphis in the 1870s. Again, no Tom Lee Park yet, no Riverside Drive. Tom Lee wasn't even born in 1870, I don't think. How about the little ice here in 1872? A little ice gorge came on down. That's happened about once every 30 or 40 years. So don't call it climate change when it happens here next year, okay? Fort Pickering. What the Civil War couldn't do to Memphis, the mosquito did with the yellow fever epidemics, which really shut down this city. We were quarantined by land, quarantined by river. After that, when the Marine Hospital moved from Napoleon, Arkansas, up to in the 1880s, up to 2 of those buildings are there at the Metal Museum. Now, I was in one on Friday. But they kept them outside the city limits, so they wouldn't want to bring the disease into the city from the mariners on the Mississippi River. These weren't the fighting Marines, these were mariners, industrial Marines, let's say. So for the 1880s, 1890s, we lost our charter. We were a taxing district. Our Board of Health was formed. We discovered our artesian wells. We picked up the dead. We distributed the food. We camped on the bluff. There's Memphis. There's us right there. And then a man by the name of George Waring came to town in our downtown area, and he thought he'd separate the sewage water from the drinking water. Pretty healthy thing to do, don't you think? We're the model for the industrial sanitary sewer in the country. It's the Memphis Plan. I knew you wanted to know that when you woke up this morning. Who did that? Here we go. The Corps of Engineers was formed. A district here. You can see all these rivers they're in control of in the Memphis area here. And this is a good example of the wing dikes that come out parallel from the river. On one side, the flow comes down, the wing dikes slows it down, the siltation drops and fills in. So say this is the Arkansas side looking this way. Actually, it's coming this way. It's going the other way. The siltation is dropping down. So if you look across over the Arkansas side in the summertime, it's only about 10 or 15 deep for that half of the river. But the channel's on the eastern side, and it scours itself to be about 40 to 50 feet deep. So the current's moving all the siltation here, and that's how they kind of control it. During the year, they come and dredge once a year after they do the soundings on the spots all around. A port of rivers and rails. Here's our cobblestones. There's the Customs House, Courthouse, and Post Office. There's the library. So this is an 1890s picture. All the cotton right here, all the railroads right there, no Riverside Drive. There's the wharf master's house right there. Look at all these people down here having a good time on the cobblestones. Lee Lines was the FedEx at the time. He'd go up to Paducah, go down to Greenville, bring things back to Memphis. The big boats would come take them on out of here. For about 40 years, they dominated the Mississippi River. The Lee House there on Victorian Village is his house. It's bed and breakfast now. One of his rules was all gamblers and fancy women must sign up with the captain before boat leaves for New Orleans. Got that? You just got to take a staycation pledge with me. You see, there's Memphis 1887, right before I think McKinley came in. And then the railroads started coming in. So by 1889, what brought us out of the yellow fever was the combination of the railroads and the cotton and the lumber. 8 railroad depots by 1889. Memphis, 1889. Look at all these conditions here. Remember, water would come up to here and go back up and down, up and down. We'd have pallets and wagons and just junk piled all along. There's a lot. So this is where that parking garage is right now on Front Street. Okay, right next to the fire station. That's right there. Cave-ins. You had willow mattresses trying to secure that before you had the concrete mattresses. Before you had bridges, how did you get a train across the river? By ferry. Come down, load into the ferry, go across the river. Here are some of the conditions there doing that. It would take 2 days to get a train across the river, 5 cars at a time. Think about that. Till we built the bridges. Interesting pictures, I think. So we built 5 bridges, 4 to Arkansas, 1 to Mud Island, the Willis Bridge. And this is how we build bridges in Memphis, okay? Here's the Great Bridge. That's the middle bridge down there, the Frisco Bridge. And the way we do it, we start at both ends and hope they meet at the middle. This is 2 months before the bridge opened. Would you go across that bridge? It's not photoshopped. This is 1 month. Would you go across that bridge? Neither would the inspectors when it got finished. So they condemned it before they opened it. Typical Memphis construction. They got volunteers to ride locomotives across the river, 18 locomotives, across the bridge to make sure it doesn't fall down. It's the longest steel span in the country at the time. The first steel span across the lower Mississippi River. And it tested out okay. And then on, let's see, 1892, on May the 12th, 1892, one of our first big Memphis in May events, the other time when the Memphis and Charleston Railroad came in, That was a May date as well. We had 50,000 people celebrating. This is what opened Memphis up to the West Coast and the Asian markets by rail. Now you're going really fast. And see how the river used to come around, the big bend here? See, now it comes from here. So it's just a big bend here. It used to go around President's Island to the east until the 1950s. And this is a good example of how shallow it is on the Arkansas side, and it gets deeper down here on the Tennessee side. There's Memphis right there again. Boom, boom. And then in 1900, we passed 100,000 people. We'd sunk down to 10,000 people during this yellow fever. So it's the greatest day in Memphis history now, besides pouring water into the river. This is another great day. We can count over 100,000. The only difference between Memphis and Hell is that Memphis has a river running along one side of it, while Hell's river ran through it. That's some jealous people from St. Louis saying that. And that's the same river that runs by St. Louis, isn't it? Got to teach them a geography lesson there. 1908, we had 8 automobiles in Memphis. The speed limit was 8 miles an hour. You can see how we grew automobiles and how necessity made us build another bridge. Here's Riverside Drive later on. There's Willie right there. All right, so now you got the rails here, 3 rails, cobblestones, steamboats, 1906, cotton everywhere. Barges came in the 19-teens. T.Q. Askin, the federal barge line, the river trade got abandoned, and when the barges started, the trains started building up in the East Coast in World War I, and not being able to get back out of it, they went to barges at that time. That's what got into operation. Here's a barge tow coming up right now. One barge is the same as 13 train cars or 58 semi-trucks. So if you have a 30-barge tow, that's the same as 400 cars on a train or 1,800 trucks on the highway. So they're moving bulk cargo, move slowly, rock, gravel, sand, things like that, petroleum's coming up and down the river. There's your comparison of how effective this is in river, railways, roadways, runways. That's the largest tow ever of 72. That's the length of a football field by the length of 5 football fields right there. How about that? 12, almost 13 acres being pushed upriver. They limit them to about 30 now, really. That's the Miss KD. I think Don Lancaster might have taken that picture. That's right in front of Mud Island right here in 1981. 1912, we had a flood. 170 acres of Memphis was flooded during that time. High water show is hell. And it was. From the Pinch and Greenlaw, all in that area was flooded during the time. The Front Street Bridge was built in 1867 to get across the Gaelso Bayou there. We annexed in the 1870s, but floods still hurt us in that area. Here's the Riverside Drive area without Riverside Drive, coming from the South Bluffs down. This is the industrial warehouse all the way between, say, Union Avenue all the way down almost to the lower bridges at the time. That was all warehouse area. Ice in 1916 and 17 again. You see the damage ice can do to a wooden boat. You can just crunch it on up. The Hurham Bridge was built in 1916 and 1917. 2 railroad lines with cantilever supports in 1917 for the automobiles that had grown so much. James Harahan was an IC executive. Saw the vision that we needed it for cars. That was 1911, but he got killed in a train wreck. So they named the bridge in his honor. He's buried in Forest Hill Cemetery. Curiously, it was engine number 382, and several years before that, Casey Jones had driven that engine to his death. That engine was in 9 different train wrecks before they decommissioned it. If I was an engineer, I would not get on engine 382. This is how they built that second bridge. I guess there's a modern day of floating scaffolding there or something, you know. This is the northernmost bridge, the Harahan Bridge. That's a modern picture being underneath it with the beams removed. Here we come in. And then was the Broadway of America, Highway 70 from San Diego to New York City, the first highway to connect us that way through all these towns across the country, the Broadway of America. The Bristol Highway in Tennessee from Memphis to Bristol. In 1982, I threw the world's longest forward pass, 9 days across Highway 70 across the country. Tennessee. First state road, there's a sign you'll find on it. Used to take 2 days to get to Grandma's house, didn't it, Linda? There's 2 bridges right there now coming in. Here's the Metal Museum, the old building's here. The only way to Arkansas in the 1930s, you know. Isn't that fun? Had a fire in 1928. That didn't help. So here is Channel 3, or here's Church on the River, Channel 3 area. But before that time in the 1920s, this was a marshaling yard for all the railroads to come down into to get on the ferry, you see. All the train lines up in that area. This was our industrial area for the city before we had the airport and expressways. Now it's Big River Crossing. Should be a neat thing all the way through. We'll get through that. Here's Mud Island a long time ago, just a flat old sandbar that just wouldn't go away. Boss Crump said it needs to be dynamited or beautified. They tried to dynamite it, it wouldn't go away. The M.E. Norman. Everybody heard the M.E. Norman? Oh, me. It was a Corps of Engineer boat going down to inspect the levees about 10 miles south of here. And near Cal Island Bend. It went down in like 3 minutes. 65 passengers, 10 crew. And 23 passengers and crew drowned, but it capsized. And a man named Tom Lee, age 39, a river worker, could not swim. He's had his 28-foot motorboat Zeb. Does anybody know where the name Zeb came from? Well, the year before, that was the winner of the Kentucky Derby. How about that? I guess he bet on Zeb, huh? But he couldn't swim. He rescued 32 survivors that night to safety, and he was declared a hero. I met Leroy Heidinger. He passed away in 2013. Carlisle Cleaners. He was 5 years old, and his daddy said, "Get on my back. I'm going to bring you to safety." In 2013, I met a person who had survived the M.E. Norman disaster. Margaret Oates was a survivor, too. So here's the memorial that's down in Tom Lee Park now. It was done in 2006. If you remember, in 1954, when they first dedicated Astor Park to Tom Lee Park, they put an obelisk there. It looks like the Washington Monument. And this is much more depicting here. And this is in 2011 when the water was actually up underneath it. It looked like he's really saving lives there in Tom Lee Park. The Engineers Club and the Commercial Appeal campaign for funds to buy a home, 923 North Mansfield. We hope to get it restored and put a historical marker in front of it. The city gave him a job with the sanitation department and afforded him an early pension. There's a plaque in the Army Engineers Depot. So 1942, still has Tom Lee Park Pool over there at where Dixie Homes used to be. It's now Legends. Astor Park was renamed Tom Lee Park. And then the trials for the capsizing of the boat and the settlement all got completed in 1929. But Tom Lee Park is named for a true hero in Memphis here on our riverfront, Tom Lee. There's another picture on the cover right there. Well, I was exploring it too. So here are the bluffs. Tom Lee Park's not even here yet, or Astor Park. There are mudslides. Western Kentucky Coal Company slid in. I mean, it was our city dump for a long time. Here's the 1927 book by John Berry. How many people got displaced? Over 50,000 people displaced in this big flood. Congress created the Flood Control Act in 1928 and started building the levees through the 1930s. This is still a Mississippi River and Tributaries project. It's still active to this day. It's it's like painting the Golden Gate Bridge. Once you finish, you got to start again, you know. Here's my crude picture of how levees were built early on and then added on and then added on and then added on. They kind of grew and grew and grew like the rings of a tree, you see. Riverside Drive, like I say, was a city dump. In 1935 it came. It was one of the first beautification events by Memphis City Beautiful Commission. You got River Bluff Walk there, Memphis and May Festival, Beale Street Landing. Again, here's us stabilizing the shore in there during that time to get ready to do that. Here's Riverside Drive being built. See how crummy it looked in there? There's those coal chutes or those conveyor belts still came over even after the drive was open. Dedicated 1935. There's the first automobiles. Isn't that a beautiful Riverside Drive right there? I might plant a tree or something, you know. Wish they finally did. That's what it used to look like magic. There you go. Starting to plant some trees here. And this is that old area. That's John B. Edgar Point right there, if you remember that. The 37 flood, 12 states, 144 counties, one of the worst natural disasters in the history of our nation. Here's a great book about it. There's Beale Street, like it was back in 2011. Fairgrounds had 9,200 refugees. Again, there's Beale Street. You're bringing your boat up to Beale Street right there in Riverside Drive. So that's what it looked like in 1937. And there's coming up Riverside Drive, taking a right, going up to Beale Street like that. That's the train trestle. The flooding at that time where the Lone Star Cement was, up in the Gayoso area, the lower areas of downtown got flooded. Harahan Bridge on the other side almost got flooded. There you go, across Arkansas there. That's an intentional floodplain. It's very flat. See the coal chute still coming over? The Wolf River Non-Conner Wall flood project, the flood walls you see up and down Wolf River and Non-Conner Creek throughout the city. It was done in the 1930s, 40s, 50s. There's still a flat mud island right there. Oh, downtown Memphis. Get another shot of Mud Island. There's the airport we used to have down there. We built the bridge so you can't land an airplane underneath the bridge right there. So they moved it up to DeWitt, Spain over there. Interesting pictures. Some people landed airplanes on the river. The guy that still comes to change the monorail cable and work on it rides a float plane in here. God, what's his name? Ralph Jordan. Still comes in and does that. I was watching him land one time. He came right up the cobblestones, he brought that plane all the way up to the top. I had to jump out of the way. He was going to run over me. Somebody didn't get their boat out of the way when the water dropped, did they? There you go. Look at that. That's Riverside Drive right there. Still in partial industrial in the 40s during the World War II. Now we're going to build the bridge here. We're cutting Mud Island, the western half off, putting it on top of the eastern half, bringing the channel around this way. That's what got Mud Island above the 100-year floodplain and made it developable. See how the water used to come around like this? Now we're going to make it come around like this. Get a straight shot for 4 miles for the downriver tows of 1,000 feet long to come through. 49, the Memphis and Arkansas bridge gets built. The southernmost bridge, that's I-55 now. Here's some construction pictures of that. There's the train yards. It's all different now. It's all residential in that area. We got about 2 minutes left, folks. Memphis Queen Line comes in 1955, and right now it's the only passenger vessel excursion boat or business between St. Louis and New Orleans. That's 1,300 miles of river. If you're from Europe and want to see the Mississippi River, you got to come to Memphis. 4 boats. Family built 2 of the boats from scratch in the backyard. Third generation ownership now. President's Island came in the 1950s. So here we're coming down from the south. They closed it off right there. The river used to come around both sides. Took it around the western side, closed it off, made a slackwater lake here. And this is all, when you go down to President's Island, you only get on about 20% of it because the rest of it's floodplain in there. You saw that siltation come in before. So here we go like this. They cut this off, send everything that way. That's where that damage was done you saw a little while ago. And here's how they built it. Coming in, let's see, filling in. You see right through there. There's the whole picture of how President's Island got built. There's Jack Carley Causeway right there. The Harbor Project was a big project. We say river, railways, roadways, runways. We're the #2 inland port on the Mississippi River, and we stopped. Willie? 267. So river, railways, roadways, runways is what we say at the time. We thought we ran this through last time, so we'll take a real quick second. Anybody got any questions right now? I know we're getting to a little break right now, so people might have to go back to work or go to lunch or something like that. Any questions? Come on. Yes, sir.
You had that river sign, those stages of the river. Where is that located?
It's located at Vance Park. If you're down at Beale Street Landing, just turn like this and look up to the city, and it's right up on top of the park. The River Bluff Walk is right there. It's right on this side of the railroad track. So you can see it from there. Now, the mariners used to get the binoculars out and their radios because now they have satellite technology in there now. I mean, it looks more like Dave Brown at the Weather Bureau when you go to a pilot house. They got all these, sonar, and they didn't tell you who's 50 miles away from you. What boat, how fast it's moving, when it's going to pass you, and all that stuff. It's really interesting to get to a pilot house. So now they have cell phones and modern technology. And like I said, it's only 1 or 3 left, and they stopped doing it for about 6 weeks, and about 5 years ago I said, we got to keep on doing that. So there are the keys if anybody wants them right there, okay? Yes, sir. Hey.
What are the numbers on the top of the historical markers? At the very top it has...
All right, the state markers, Tennessee, the silver markers that are State of Tennessee Historical Commission, those are the silver ones. 4E, something like that. All right, now we have 3 grand divisions of the state of Tennessee, right? Well, the Tennessee Roads has 4 divisions. 1, 2, 3, 4, from east to west. So the westernmost quarter is 4. And they got it A, B, C, D, E, about 4 counties in each. So 4E is Lauderdale, Fayette, Tipton, and Shelby County, 4E. There's 133 of those markers in Shelby County. There's about 12 in Fayette County, about 12 in Tipton County, about 12 in Lauderdale County, in the 4E. So that's just their numbering system for the Tennessee Historical Commission markers as they do them each time. And I got pictures of every single one of them. We're going to show some of those in the Memorials and Markers show, the next to last show, or the Thursday, March 7th. And the Shelby County Historical Commission has got over 102 markers now, 41 in the last 8 years. We're real prolific the last 8 years. Those are the green markers you see. And you got West Tennessee Historical Commission. West Tennessee Historical Society, National Park Service. There's 339 different historical markers in Shelby County with text on them by 25 different granting agencies. You think I'm crazy about manhole covers? Think about historical markers. They're really a lot of fun. Yes, sir.
How did they get the steamboats from the backyard between?
Well, they built the hull. They built the hull. This is in 1977. Tom Mainley, he didn't like the prices he was getting from the shipyards, so he's going to build his own. So he's presented some plans to the Corps of Engineers, and they approved them. So he built the hull. He cleared out some area in his backyard in Whitehaven on Shelby Drive. Built the hull about 25 feet wide by about 100 feet long. It rained for 2 weeks, too. People next door said, what's going on here? You know, seriously. And he moved it with a house mover in 1977 down Highway 61, the same time Elvis's funeral was coming down Highway 51. Big traffic jam in Whitehaven that day. Launched it at McKettle Lake, towed it up to the cobblestones to their docks, and welded out the first deck, second deck, third deck, smokestacks, and pilot house. Took them 3 years to build the boat from scratch, the family and the crew. They did it so good they did it in 1982 with the Island Queen. So it's 2 of the boats they built from scratch in their backyard. That's Luke doing that to us. He wants us to quit. You know, it's time. Well, time's up. He's got. All right, we're going to do it this way, folks. Here we go. Really quick. We're going to take about 3 more minutes here. That was our riverfront in 67, summer 68, cobblestones in 69, setting up for the barge landing or whatever for the Cotton Carnival. The downtown airport here. Summer 72, there's the old boathouses. They're down at McKettle Lake now. The marina took over those Memphis Yacht Club ownership there. Another ice storm in 73, so we're due for another one about right now, aren't we? Thank you. All right, so here's the old channel this way. The state boundary line went with that. This is the old channel. When we built this bridge here, we brought that all around like this. So this is still the state of Tennessee, right there. When you're looking at Standing on Mud Island, you're looking at Tennessee across the water there. There's another comparison, side by side, you see. So all this right here is all this right here, coming around like that. And Charles Curry came up with that idea. There's a newspaper story to prove it. So you see what that they talked about. They would have to come around like this and take that thing that may be 1,000 feet long. The piers of the Hernando de Soto Bridge are 880 feet wide. That's a tough turn with the current and everything. Here's a Hernando de Soto Bridge being built, I-40 bridge, Bridge of Lights, Big M Bridge, and everybody calls it the new bridge, right? It's 50 years old. It's not new anymore. And the other one's the old bridge. Right? See, so you can't land airplanes underneath there, can you? You know, when we did the Bridge of Lights, Pat Tiger wanted to have blue lights, but the FAA said no, because she loves the blues. Why? Because if in a foggy night, an airplane might try to land with those blue landing lights on the bridge, you know. So that's the only thing Pat Tiger ever lost in downtown Memphis when it came to a party. There's the Bridge of Lights. September 5th, 1986, we raised $500,000. And the Mariners, all this glare, you got on the pier here, you got a red light in the center of the pier, a green light. They shoot for that green light in the center of the pier. Now you come around that bend in Memphis, and you got close encounters of a third kind. All these lights just beaming on you. That's a hazard to navigation, so the Mariners wanted to have it turned off. We just raised $500,000 in private money, so the compromise was they put a sensor on the bridge over here, and a towboat pilot can get their floodlight and hit that sensor, and the lights will turn off like that. The boat can clear on through it with their night vision, and the lights will twinkle back on in 15 minutes, and everybody's happy. See, that's how we do things on the river, you know. Here's Riverside Drive, that's Old Tom Lee Park. People got their cars down in there. This is John Bierker Point. Y'all remember this? Isn't this cool? Now we put the dike out here, dredge on up, try to stabilize Riverside Drive. This is a great project. 7 good things happened in this project. We stabilized the channel, we stabilized Riverside Drive, we stabilized the bluff so we could insure the bluff, so we could finance the bluff, so we could build on the bluff, and we got 20 extra acres of park land. That's a pretty good government project, isn't it? And now it's wrong. It's too flat, and we're going to try to redesign it a little bit now. But that's what the motivation was to make a flat park, and that really helped Memphis to make growth. All that's down in here, but right above it, this is where South Bluffs is now. All the train lines are gone in the 1970s. That's what's there now. See what's happened? That's how downtown is transformed because of all this. There's Tom Lee Park right there. Now you see. So you go from this, nothing here, to park there. Residential here, all residential here. And there's sugar services, by the way. They're never going anywhere. We got to have a sugar in Memphis, don't we? Summer of 81, Mud Island being built. Summer of 82, Mud Island being open. Another book. grand opening Mud Island, the Riverwalk. Nesbitt Calthorpe, 1,746 different pieces. This is just a big drainage ditch, like a crossword puzzle. 1,746 different pieces that are 4 feet by 4 feet by 8 feet, weigh about a half a ton. He put them in place like a jigsaw puzzle, every twist. He did this without the aid of a computer. I got his protractors at home. We did an exhibit about it not too long ago at Mud Island. It's just an incredible model there. 1 30-inch step equals a mile in distance as you walk. Of course, the Mississippi River Museum, who Captain Church's silver set is on loan from, right? This bridge was built in 1987. The commercial appeal said, Hackett builds bridge to nowhere. Well, there was nobody out there. 600 acres of vacant land. Now there's 7,000 people living out there, 5 minutes from the core of downtown in suburban-type living, in which bugs the heck out of me. 7,000 people twice a day can come off and here, but nobody is allowed to come here and take a left and go to Mud Island and drive right up to it. Can we get a little, staycation pledge on that next time or something? Hey, let's drive over to Mud Island. Come on. There's the pyramid, of course, the 6th tallest pyramid in the world. Now, real quickly, the 2011 flood. If you go down Riverside Drive, this is that last pier when you're driving down Riverside Drive to the west. There's a river gauge right there, you see. There it is. So here's our flood during that time. You see how that floodplain just all got kind of wiped out through there. There's President's Island. You see the overrun of President's Island right there. Coming through, this is, that's the little way station right there. There's Dacus Lake. All those folks had to take those trailers up and out of there. This is looking west to east towards Memphis. Yeah, that's looking back west to east. That's downtown right there. Flood walls started coming up. That's when I know, hey, we're going to have a good flood. I got excited, put the sandbags out. The ones around St. Jude were pink, if you remember that. But they were in that floodplain that used to flood all the time. The wall there at the pyramid goes up to 57 feet. Okay, we got to 48 feet. We didn't need those sandbags, but why not get ready for it and have a show and have a good photo op and all that? I got mad because nobody was talking about it, and everybody came down and said, well, those 7 flags mean this, and this bridge was that, and this was that, and it was all wrong, and the CNN and TNT were here. Downtown Memphis is flooded, Beale Street is flooded, and people were canceling vacations. 500 people were displaced by this flood. That's 2% of 1% of our population. And the national news was shutting our city down. I said, well, I'm looking out my door. Nothing's being shut down. They were standing there, Bill in Riverside going, in ankle-deep water going, Bill in Riverside is flooded. Will there be a Grizzlies basketball game tonight? Well, yeah, it's 30 feet higher. Sure. So I ran them off after 2 days. A commercial appeal called me a raconteur. Phil Cannon loaned me his PA from the FedEx. The battery ran out after about 3 hours. I ran out the battery every night. When I got tired of talking about the river, I'd talk about anything else anybody want to talk about. You know me. And Benny decided to hire me at RDC after that. You couldn't get over to Mud Island because the road leading to the island was flooded. Go figure. Only in Memphis, Tennessee. But the little service road was low right there. So you couldn't get off and on, so you had to evacuate. Here's Tom Lee Park. There's the westernmost walkway of Tom Lee Park. There's the little light poles. Barbecue had to go to the Fairgrounds that year, remember? There's a little river gauge right on Riverside Drive, right at the walkway. Riverside Drive was built in 1935. It took 67 years to get a sidewalk. 2002. There it is right there, right across from AutoZone. It's at 46 right here. I think this is 48 right here. Goes underwater right there. You get to take a picture. Then it starts, that's how it all filled in. There's Tom Lee Park. This is Shelby Farms. This is Germantown Parkway. This is Wolf River backing up. Can't get out. You see? You know that's the drive-in right there. Some are putt-putt. Somebody did move a few school buses. Hello. Come on. Rodney Baber softball fields in the floodplain. CBHS high school football field. That's Baptist Hospital right there. You know I'm an MUS guy. Mud Island again. See, you can't get over to Mud Island. It's all low right in that area underneath the bridge right there. It's just incredible. Mud Island flooded up to Greenville on the Riverwalk. Now it starts going down. You see where the debris line came to. Here it is in 1937. Look at that. Here's the exact same shot in 2011. Isn't that amazing? We know what's coming. And everybody went down there, had to throw a rock in the river, right? Well, look at all that rock up on the train line. Look what he had to clean up afterwards. Don't do that. There's the overrunning President's Island again, that levee right there. Probably took several $1 million to fix that in Corps of Engineer relief funds. Isn't that amazing? In just 2 weeks' time, it did all that. We're about done. RDC built Beale Street Landing. It's a handicap accessible ramp. I was the first guy to come off a boat, go both northbound and southbound on the American Queen when this happened. I got to lecture on the American Queen. You see it says Memphis, Tennessee right there, the largest riverboat ever built. That's a lot of fun. Hey, if you want to go on there, email me. They send me these specials every now and then. Usually people book 6 to 8 months or 12 months out. Every once in a while they got a boat that's not too filled and they got like some 2-for-1s. You can get in like 2 months. So I'll send you those specials along if you want to email me. Here's my favorite story, the Ossining. Anybody heard of the Ossining? It was on the Hudson River in 1907. It ferried prisoners from New York City to Sing Sing Prison. This is where the term "you're going up the river" came from. Got bought by a company in Louisiana in 1920s and 1930. Came to Memphis, got bought by the Warner and Tamble Company, and renamed the Mary Elizabeth for Warner Tamble's, Captain Warner's daughter, Mary. That's the Proud Mary. Back in 1988, it was laid up in the harbor in the low water in Memphis and fell over and got scrapped. That's the Proud Mary that the song was written about. Big wheels keep on turning are the propellers. Those are the wheels. If you're in the pilot house, those are your wheels on the water, the propellers. Those are the big wheels. Not a big steamboat like you see Tina Turner doing this big steamboat deal, which is a great song too. In fact, John Fogerty, when he left Creedence Clearwater Revival, got sued. He couldn't sing his own songs because he sounded too much like himself. Recording industry's tough. So after about 10 years, they settled that, and he came back in 1986, and he did his comeback tour starting from Mud Island Amphitheater. Bob Kelly brought him there. I got to give him a tour of the Mississippi River Museum, and he told me that's why he came back and settled that lawsuit, because Tina Turner was getting too much credit for Rolling on the River, because Proud Mary was his favorite song. Both of them are great. If you listen to both of them, they're great. So that's why he came back. He autographed my center field cap. That was a center field tour. And this picture was in the butcher shop for a long time, this poultry. You ever been in the butcher shop down there? And they sold, and I went out. They were selling small wares and all this stuff, and these pictures weren't, these poultry, there's like 21 of them. And I just wanted that one. I had a price in my head, and like 3 weeks later, they were at the butcher shop out east and said, come on out and pick these pictures up. They gave me all 21 of them for the one price. I thought. So they were exhibited at Mud Island next year of all these river scenes. We got them over at Mud Island. We get to use them. But that's the Proud Mary. That's the G.H. Tamble in the harbor in Memphis. Captain Jake used to push the Memphis showboat with the Proud Mary. And every time we go up there and do a stake, we'd always tell them, if you're broken into tonight and that painting's missing, it's called Miss Captain Jake got drunk and came back and broke into the place and stole it. We didn't mean any harm. Just come over and get it from the riverboats, and we'll bring it back and we'll pay for any damages. But when you get to cook your own steak there at the butcher shop and telling stories, it's a lot of fun. Historic cobblestones, there's some projects to get them restored and get the sinkholes out of them, the utilities underneath. Beale Street Landing, it's going underneath the chains now. We can get 3 boats in there at one time, believe it or not. 100 boats coming now. There's some beautiful sunsets. And this is why you have that weird color structure there. I know our pictures here don't show it, but it's a sunset on the Mississippi River. You pixelate it and enlarge it, and that's what that means. So if you go back, well, let's see. Well, you can't see it good. That house right there, the elevator house, that's a pixelated sunset on the Mississippi River. See? All the swirls, you pixelate it. Y'all know what pixelation is, don't you? This boat is bigger than the dock. We're still building that. We're landing boats in and out of building that. It's 420 feet long by 89 feet wide by 6 stories tall. You take the 100 North Main building and lay it down in the river. That's how big it is. 430 passengers, 180 crew. A lot of fun. This is before we had the debris booms. Look at all this stuff building up here. That was a lot of fun. Priscilla Presley, I saw her last Sunday. She remembered how that thing exploded on her when she christened the boat. She was the godmother of the American Queen. And there's all the rivers we go to. Now there's 100 vessels. That's the first time in. I took that picture, April 26th. Curiously, the same day that the Sultana left Memphis in 1865. We're coming into the dock in the middle of the night, about 3 o'clock in the morning. We've got to get the 6 golf carts out, turn the lights on, get the suitcases up. Now there's 100 vessels coming in from 5 different companies. 5 vessels coming in, 100 visits, 25,000 people coming in and out of Memphis now. It's a $42 million annual economic impact. But between 2008 and 2011, there was nobody coming in on passenger vessels. So we helped rebirth that industry, and it is strong. When the American Queen comes out, their stacks are 99 feet high. You get caught up and down this river, you get caught in between bridges, you can't go anywhere, right? They got caught one time. They had to bus people from Cairo, Illinois to St. Louis one time. Had to bus people to Vicksburg when the water got low one time. So when they come out, they take their stacks down like this. It gets them down to 55 feet, you see? No stacks. They clear through, they start bringing them back up. When the last time they got caught in Paducah, they were there for about a week, and they sent me a picture, and they cleared it by a foot. They had a little yardstick. I'm just glad some wake didn't come along and bang somebody up into it. But it gets tricky on the river sometimes. And then the Harahan Bridge Boardwalk, these were early pictures. It's now the big river crossing coming across and everything. We hope to get a flyover in that area. It's kind of a nasty way with all the trucks in there. Beautiful big river crossing, night lights, mighty lights, bikes and walking. There's your Arkansas line right in the middle. There, you get right on top of the, usually you're looking at them from a distance. Now you're right on top of all those barge tows, like a bird's eye view. Sunset. There I am. There we go. We're through. Thank you for coming today. JimmyOgle.com. Sorry about the little glitch. Remember now, Making Memphis. And remember our sponsors here. I'll stick around for a while. Thursday's show is a century of black history in Memphis, something like that. When we talk about African American history in Memphis, we usually stop at the Civil War and slavery and pick up again at the sanitation strike and miss a whole lot that happened in Memphis, more than basketball and music, okay, of what happened. We've done a great job at basketball and music, but a lot of the teachers, preachers, businessmen, lawyers, all these great civil rights activists, and we're going to cover that, again, in a limited fashion, as fast as I can, and try to have fewer slides or something so we don't stop in the middle. We thank Willie and thank Luke again. But you're good for standby, aren't you? Metro Eats is great food downstairs. I'll be on the radio today from 3 to 6. Any questions? I'll stick around here a while. And questions? Thank you, Charmiel, for coming.